your homes or the bars, or are you in bars? Can we go to bars now? I don't know, with everything being on shutdown, but it seems as though they are opening up. I hope so, because I know that I'm getting tired of being inside. That being said, tonight's show promised to be a lot of fun, laughs, good times. So join us, share the feed with your friends, and tell them to share with their friends. I'm going to have a lot of fun. And I want to kick the show off with something that was just called to my attention. One of my favorite characters as a kid. Here we go. Mr. Potato Head. Now, I don't know about you, but I was never inclined as a kid, and I was a rather precocious kid, to ponder, to wonder, or to try to figure out what sex Mr. Potato Head was. I just assumed he was a potato and a toy. But for some reason now, Hasbro has decided to come out and say that it's gender neutral. No sex, he's just there. I didn't know potatoes had sex. And when I say sex, I mean not sex like sex, but sex is in gender sex. But it doesn't matter. I wasn't taking it that far, but for some reason now, in this world of political correctness, everything has to be identified. And lo and behold, Mr. Potato Head, I don't know if he was a male or female, but he did have that Mr. in front of him, so I guess we would assume he was a male. He's genderless now. No sex for you, Mr. Potato Head, thanks to the politically correct police. Poor guy, what can I say? Well, we're going to talk about that and some other topics. Joining me, my host at Small Town Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going well, Rob.
And our special guest, Michael Loftus.
Gentlemen.
Party. How's it going? And of course, Michael Johns, co-founder of the Tea Party. How is it going, gentlemen?
What's up, guys?
Going well.
So, guys, help me out here. Did you guys know that Mr. Potato had a gender? Did you guys even play with Mr. Potato?
I had one of these things growing up, and you could take like the legs and put them in like as their ears, and basically completely discombobulate the function of these things of them. But I don't ever remember pondering the gender orientation. But the Mr. before Potato Head was somewhat suggestive of possibly a male orientation.
Right. I mean, no, I would get my sister's Barbie dolls and I would look at them and say, this is interesting. Looks different than my toys. But that's as far as it went. Okay, but this whole thing with Mr. Potato and the potato families, and they're now genderless. Like, what's happening in society? This is crazy.
It's like if there was ever an automatic, like, gender fluid toy, it was already Mr. Potato Head, because you take her lips and put them on his. It's just like
right.
Why do they want to shine a light on this? And it's odd. Like, if you don't want to start thinking about this, right? Like in my mind, it's always Mr. Potato Head. Don Rickles does the voice. What do you want, a cookie? That's Mr. Potato Head. I don't want to make it even more. I don't want to think about it, because then you start thinking about it. You're like, well, he takes his eyes and he shoves them in his butt. Like, what is going on?
Oh,
let's keep reality away from children's toys.
Yeah, I would think so. What do you say, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most ridiculous examples of cancel culture we've seen yet. We thought it was bad with the syrup and everything else that we've seen in the past few months, but this one is a new level. Right.
Now, Aunt Jemima's Pancake is now called the Mills Company. I mean, now she's without a job. Now she's standing in the unemployment line looking to see if someone will allow her to bake or make pancakes. It's like, Aunt Jemima, are you serious?
Have you seen the new label that they have?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yes, the new label. They've taken away Aunt Jemima, and now it's just like a picture of an old-timey factory that looks like no one works there. It looks like it's so like the Democrats were here. It's like there used to be a person who had a job, and now it's just an empty factory. That's total stunk. It might as well be Baltimore.
And I thought, I think
it bothers people.
I thought we were trying to.
there's
ahead,
a
Michael.
committee of activists. There's a committee of people sitting around literally going through, every one of these consumer products, pondering what sort of political agenda they might be able to extract from it. I mean, these are not by any means natural sort of, emerging revelations or concerns by anybody outside of America. And I just want to remind, I mean, if in case it's all bringing you down, because it is all negative, and I think it's bad messaging, negative for society. And in some ways, this culture, politics upstream from culture, I believe that. But let's not forget, this was the undoing of this party the last time. Once they started forgetting about working men and women and wages and job creation and the fundamental issues, the bread and butter issues that were confronting this country, and started talking about all of these sort of extraneous things that were driven by the far left and had no real immediate consequence for even forget a vast majority of Americans, for a small number of Americans, it proved the political undoing of the entire party, and the people see through it. I've never seen a president in our lifetime who I think literally, I tweeted this the other day, has a downside that could be lower than anyone we've seen in modern political times. I mean, I don't think Biden's stable numbers are much above 30-35%, and if when trouble hits, I think this guy will fall low.
And does he even know that he's president? I mean, they're now talking about
from him, which is, let me just tell you, having worked, in the White House, everything, there's no accidents. Everything's by design. Everything has been run by people from 15, 20 different perspectives, particularly from the standpoint of how people are going to be impressed or, impacted by it. And the fact that we're not seeing much from him, and we're never seeing him speak extreme, kind of off the top of his head, or ad-libbing anything, like Trump did almost daily on the South Lawn and elsewhere, is suggestive of the fact that he's not trusted by this inner circle to do much of anything. The question really is who's running the place, because I don't think it is Biden, and I don't think it's Harris either. I'm pretty confident it's not the most obvious chief of staff, et cetera. So, I mean, this is kind of an intriguing castle question, of intrigue, of who you remember that big Time magazine covered the brains of George Bush with Karl Rove on the cover, which I thought, it was kind of very derogatory to Bush 43. But I think the question is, who are the brains of Biden? Because somebody's driving this agenda, and they're coming up with some pretty wacky ideas pretty quickly.
Yeah. Real quickly. It's like almost like who's on first. They don't want him to have the nuclear code because they're afraid that he might, all at once in a dream, and oh my God, we've got to use a nuclear code. We've got to blow up Iran. We've got to blow up Iraq. This guy's definitely not a person that we want with the nuclear codes. But that all being said, one of the questions that I have for you, Michael Loftus, just from watching your show, why can't we have fun anymore? Why is everyone so afraid to make fun of the left? Now, they'll make fun of the right all day long. Look at Saturday Night Live. But why are people so afraid? It's just to have a joke, to joke about anything. What's happened to our humor?
Well, you got a lot of performers who are afraid because they don't know how to deal with the situation. When the solution is to just keep going, just go right through them. Do not alter your sensibilities at all. Do not give them an inch. Do not give them it's the cancel culture. They're like dogs. And if you show a little bit of fear, that's when they come in and they start biting. But like, I haven't changed. I just did a 1-hour special for Fox Nation, and it's doing gangbusters for them. I'm just going to keep swatting away. Bill Burr's still doing great. He's not a very PC guy. I'm trying to think of who else is out there doing well.
Anthony Cumia.
Yeah, he's doing well. But there's no secret sauce to it. You just have to have a pair and just man up and do not change. And it's crazy. It's crazy. they are just like dogs. It's like this: the second you start apologizing for something, they come at you, and then you're gone. Never apologize.
It's like you have to apologize for being a man, apologize for being a color.
Yeah, we've established that, and Trump has definitely proven that. It's sad because, what is an apology? It should be some recipe of acknowledgement of, hey, sorry, I didn't, mean to do A, B, or C, if that was the consequence of it. And there's many times when you've seen people mistakenly say things that are then labeled offensive, which, by the way, is a very strong word. It takes a lot to be offended really by words, because there's so many harsher things in this life.
Yeah.
That this life puts us through a lot of tough things. Words, and that's my perspective. And yet I've dealt with words, and I can tell you, there's a lot of focus on the left about their use, and you can just see how they understand the consequence of language, the consequence of acronyms, consequence of how things are described. But that's because they understand the political impact that these things have, and how you can present, some really crazy ideas under the right verbiage, which they've become fairly expert at. And
they're scaring everyone with it. Look at Coca-Cola and their sensitivity training and telling whites, oh, try to behave less white. We don't want you to be that white. Just, a little tone it down just a little bit.
What does that even what does that mean?
It makes absolutely no sense. You can't be white. Okay, if I go out and get a tan, does that help? I don't get it. And how do you guys, as white men, how do you feel? Can you imagine if Coke were to say, we're going to have a class and tell black people, try to behave less black. Try not to say so many yos and bros.
Right?
It's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
That's how you know how racist anything is. Take out white and replace it with anything else, and it sounds horrible. Try to be less Jewish. Try to be less Indian. It's just horrible and insulting. And the
idea that there's common denominators to these categories of people by gender, ethnicity, religion is the ultimate in discriminatory practicing and verbiages. To be less white, that means monolithic. You know how much diversity there is within. It's like ridiculous.
I don't know how to be less white, but I do know how to drink more Pepsi.
Well, you better learn how to be less white, because they're going to come after you. They're going to counsel you with the politically correct police. First it was men. You're too toxic. You're too much of a man. You've got to, tone it down a little. How do you tone it down? What do you want from me? It's like, are you mad because I stand up when I get ready to take a piss? I should sit down. What do you want? Like, you're too toxic. And now it's try to be less white. When you go out there, I don't know how you can do it, but try to do it. It's insane. And go ahead.
Here's the scary thing to me. This is where it's like we have a bunch of generations who are living in this very, very naive bubble. Oh, you referred to me with the wrong pronoun. Now my feelings are hurt. Your masculinity is toxic. I'm having it. That's a microaggression. What are these people going to do when the shit hits the fan and all of a sudden the Chinese are coming over the hill with legit super soldiers?
Well,
they're not playing this. They're not playing these games.
I spent the first part of my career working on Africa policy, and I, continue to maintain contact with a lot of people on that continent. Those who've been to China describe it as one of the most racist societies and cultures that they've ever been in. And, there literally are no Africans permitted signs on various building structures, and there's an incredible degree of just instinctual bias in the Communist Party as it relates to ethnicity. I really don't. I don't know. I think it's such it's one of these topics. Like, as soon as it comes up, it's a lot of people just become uncomfortable And I feel like we've been on defense with it for a whole long time. And, you know, at some point you just got to say, look, man, I mean, we're all human beings, and we, you know, decent people respect every human being, regardless of those things. And I don't even think in those terms, really. I think the left does think in those terms because it's part of their political design, this idea of categorizing voters and being able to depict one side against another. And, yeah, that kind of was the foundation of Marx's Communist Manifesto about how to develop a revolution. And the first thing, you've got to create tension. And and he saw the tension between this sort of entrepreneur class and the working class. And I think over the decades, that whole design has evolved to the point where this has become a centerpiece of their approach. Now, the question becomes for us, do we counter as we have? I mean, like, the Republican National Committee has an African-American outreach sort of department, or a Hispanic American outreach department, Jewish American outreach, women's groups. Do we, I mean, is it not true that the fundamental positions affecting this country are essentially the same? We want to see growth, prosperity, security, safety, America held in respect around the world. I mean, are these not common unifying themes that ultimately transcend all of this, or are we in a point where, in fact, by the way, when I talk to my to Hispanic friends of mine, this idea that there's some unifying theme behind a Hispanic community is deemed absurd to them. Cuban Americans don't feel any real natural affinity to say Puerto Ricans than they would to Caucasians or Venezuelans. I mean, this idea that they're sort of monolithically categorized is deemed absurd.
Unless you're Joe Biden. Joe Biden can distinctly tell you, if you've got a hard time deciding if you're going to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black. Joe Biden.
Yep. Well, you know, I looked at myself when I went to vote. I said, oh, wow, you're not black because you're not voting for Joe Biden. I don't know what color I am. I'm like, but it looked black, but it's like, oh, well, I'm brown. I can see that I'm brown. When he told me, hey, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, and he gets away with it. I mean, I even wonder if he knows what color he is.
It's unbelievable. like Trump would say, you know what? We need to stand up for America. And everybody's like, oh, that's a dog whistle. That is a racist dog whistle. And then Joe Biden will be like, black and brown people can't work the internet. And no one has a problem with it.
Or they all think alike. You know, black people, they all think alike. I'm thinking, did he just say that? And people, oh, no, nothing to see here. Or when he came out and said, well, you go to any 7-Eleven and you're greeted with Indians. Like, did Joe just say that? Like, oh,
yes. He's got a 6-gun racist shooter just going off every afternoon. And like, they don't call him on any of it. And Trump can be like, wow, the sky's blue today. And they're like, oh, that's a dog whistle. That's a dog whistle. He's talking to the Smurfs. Make America blue again.
Oh my gosh, making us blue again.
Trying to get into Rikers Island to meet Mandela or whatever.
We forgot about that. How can we forget about that? That he was right there at the cusp of it. I mean, but these guys, it's to hear what they say, and no one calls them out. The other day, he was on some Zoom call. He was questioning.
We are timid. We have a timid movement and a timid party, and we're here to correct it. That's part of our little conversation. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you saw him questioning a nurse, asking, "How old are you? Are you a nurse? You look like a freshman." I'm thinking, where is he going with this? And you have Kamala.
She was like 30 years old and had been working, 8 or 10 years or something.
And I'm like, where is this guy going with this? But he gets a pass on it. Now, I want to pivot just a little bit, going back to the theme of having fun and talking and joking. Nancy Pelosi. Now, I mean, what can I say? She gives us a lot of laughs, a lot of gaffes, but we could take that and we can run with it. But comedians will not touch her. It's like they're afraid to make fun of Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters.
God. You realize I'm on the show, right? Yeah. You realize I'm right here.
No, are you there?
Most comedians won't. It's crazy. Saturday Night Live's not. It's like Ronald Reagan would say this about Republicans. It's like the 11th commandment. You don't make fun of your fellow Republican. And the Democrats have an equal and opposite law. Comedians on the left will not go after Nancy because that's all you see represented on TV. But that woman has been my bread and butter on my YouTube channel, The Loftus Party. Dude, I did a video, Nancy Pelosi, because the thing with Nancy Pelosi, I do an impression of her. She's got the bilateral speech, and she'll just say whatever's popping into her mind. You have to read the bill to find out what's in it, and then throw in defending the Constitution in America. And then we have to defend the Constitution in America.
What about the erection? The erection on the Capitol.
Oh yeah, there was an erection on the Capitol. There's a Capitol erection. These people, they're animals, and they just had huge. I think they were sponsored by Cialis. And
Ron Johnson's name wrong? Was that?
Oh yeah, she called him Don Johnson. From Miami Vice. Okay, and then not only that, you had Chuck Schumer on the House floor talking about the president causing an erection.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to touch it. I mean, you had MSNBC. No one wanted to touch it.
Probably not.
Well, as the president said, he has big. Well, don't let the hands fool you. So hey, but you had CNN, MSNBC, and all these other news agencies, going in and cutting that out, editing that out when he said, well, the president caused an erection. They went in and they literally, I'm like, why not have fun with it? Why not say, did he just say that? But it's like, oh no, we can't.
This is the left. The left dominates the media. They dominate the news, and they realize the propaganda is working. Between the propaganda of the natural culture, and they set the tone, and what's going on in the schools, that I think this little warfare that they started back in the 70s and 80s, it's paying off in huge dividends. Mm-hmm. They're never going to make fun of their own. They will never make fun of their own, because they're trying hard and they just want to make America a better place. And sure, sometimes they misspeak, but they really care deeply about us, not like those animal Nazi Republicans. That's really, did you see that poll that came out today? The number one issue for Democrats, it's not the economy, it's not COVID. The number one issue, their biggest concern is Trump voters and Republicans. They think that's the biggest problem with the country. So that's scary.
I don't think they believe that. I mean, I think this party itself on a leadership level was out of touch with its base. I mean, they're not addressing the issues that are coming. And you just look at this agenda that Biden's gone through here in a month. I mean, it's a whole bunch of issues that are that the country is either ambivalent about or is actually antithetical about. And by the way, job-wise, over 700,000 jobs lost last week. Because we got closed schools, open borders. A president who's now allowing China to invest in our electric grid. Who's
unbelievable.
I mean, you literally go through this, and I ask myself if I'm seeing it from too highly a partisan lens, because I'll try to be fair to him, but. It's like literally like step by step how to undermine and do damage to this country and its people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like if you were going to do that, it's like he's hitting every button. Now this Iran, I mean, it's really it is. I think we're at the point where we got to stop complaining about it, but we do need to understand it. Mm-hmm. Like so back to Mr. Potato Head, like somebody actually brought that up and said, hey, here's an opportunity. And that wasn't some
and that's scary.
Some politically minded person in the way of Soros or someone, charged with this functional role. And it makes this whole profession a lot more difficult, because now all of a sudden you got to be like overly concerned and conscious about how people looking to bring you down are going to perceive everything you do. at a point where we're simultaneously, but not seriously, talking about trying to unify, not just to unify this country, we have to unify the political community too. Meaning, we have to have a mutual respect for each other. That's impossible to do when the other side is trying to tear you down, cancel you,
right?
Whatever.
Yeah, just seen more. More division the other day from former President Barack Obama. I don't know if you guys seen this, but he actually told a story where he said when he was in college, someone called him a racial slur and he punched him and broke their nose. Find it interesting that this story is just now coming out now, and it's hard to believe that Obama beat up anybody. But did you guys see that?
Yeah,
well, yeah.
I saw where Obama, and whenever time he talks about like his physical prowess, I just go back to him, like, one of those pictures where he was like working out. He was like using 2.5 pound weights. So yeah, I kind of doubt it. I doubt it too. I don't know whose nose he broke. Would that person please step forward? I would
that same
really
thing.
like to meet that person.
I want to meet the person also.
In the is it on Spotify where he's doing the series of podcasts with Springsteen? Because somebody having grown up like as a Springsteen fan, like I always sort of understood why he didn't identify as a Republican, but then along comes Trump, and I think for sure like this is a sort of Republican that a guy like Springsteen would embrace, saying all the things that he was saying like all the way back to the Born in the USA tour, about the plight of the working man and the effect it had, not just on that person, but on the people around them. And, those are, that always seems sincere. And I think it's really turned out to be completely insincere. I mean, this guy is sitting there with this globalist. Now he's all about all this other stuff. That's, kind of the Hollywood elitist agenda, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting also that all this time, Barack Obama never shared this story, didn't put it in either of the 3 books that he's written, but now he's coming out and saying, hey, this is what I did. And it makes me, it just goes back to, Biden. Someone just put in the chat room as far as Biden, when he gives the State of the Union address, is he too going to talk about Corn Pop and what he did to Corn Pop, when he was a young kid and he told Corn Pop, hey, Corn Pop, come over here and do this. I mean, they make this stuff up. And again, no one wants to touch it and make fun of them. There is so much material. If I were a comedian, I would talk about it every night. There you go, right there. But it's like they're afraid to make fun of them. Even Nancy Pelosi, remember when there was a meme going around about her being drunk? She protested and said, hey, take that down. She got mad at Facebook because Facebook took it down, but Twitter wouldn't take it down. I'm like, is she that sensitive? Is she actually looking at this stuff? And she's thinking, they think that I'm a drunk. Maybe she is a drunk. I don't know.
Well, she's the daughter of a mob boss. So it's like, she's like Joe Pesci in a wig. Like, am I funny? Do I amuse you? Am I like a clown to you?
It's unbelievable.
Yes, Spider.
She's worried about everything except the people that sent her there to work on her behalf. And I'll tell you the thing. The first time I really encountered her face to face, I think was the 90s. And I think she had just gotten in, and I went to this human rights thing up on the Hill, and she gave this really great speech about Hong Kong and the Tibetans. And, it's listening. I'm like, wow, this woman's going to really be a force in this party. And then you just kind of watch how that system and the city just erodes these people. It strips just piece by piece. It takes away their character. And ultimately, as Reagan said, the second oldest profession in the world becomes a lot like the oldest profession in the world. You can use that one, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's a good. Reagan was great. Reagan had tons of them. That dude, Reagan was hilarious, and Trump is the king. Trump is the king.
Trump puts him in the room. You know what I mean? Which no other president really. Reagan didn't do that. Like Trump will tell you here's what happened, or here's how this.
Oh yeah.
When Romney came to ask him for money, for his campaign or whatever, he'll give you like a whole culture and environment of that whole situation. And I think
Trump he'll do the characters, he'll do voices, he'll do act outs, he'll do audience participation. He is a force of nature.
Yeah, not structured.
One of my best things that Trump did is when they killed who was a guy, Salami, whatever his name was, and he reads, "He is dead," and he died, and he kept punctuating. I thought, he is dead, and he died like a dog.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. My favorite is when the Democrats had just taken back the House, and we were going to have that the government was going to have to shut down because they couldn't agree on a budget. And Nancy Pelosi went off to Hawaii, and then she came back, and they're like, and Trump's like, all right, we got to figure out the budget. And then Nancy and the Democrats are like, well, we got to go to Puerto Rico. We're going for our retreat in Puerto Rico. So Trump's like, okay. Then they come back, and Trump's like, so we got to work on this budget. And Nancy's like, no, we're going to go on a fact-finding mission to Europe. We're going to Europe. And Trump's like, okay, knowing damn well he wasn't going to put her scrawny ass on a government plane. He let him get all the way to the airport.
That was a classic.
That is the funniest stuff ever. His assistant was like, should we tell him? Should we tell him? He's like, no. Let them pack their bags. Let them get on the bus. Should we tell him now? No, let him see the plane.
That was hilarious. And what about when he sent the letter to the String Actors Guild and saying, "Oh, so you want me to leave? So what?"
Closing line. It was like, "Thanks, you've done nothing for me."
Yes.
So what?
And him going back and forth with Rocket Man when he just started calling Kim Jong-un Rocket Man, and then Rocket Man was like, I got a nuclear button, I got a button on my desk. And Trump's like, I got a button too. Mine's bigger, and it works. He's like,
Trump's a huge Elton John fan, and when that happened, I was like, look, he's really coming up with this stuff. Nobody's doing it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, Rocket Man's probably one of his favorite Elton John songs.
Yeah.
It was hilarious to see him come up with this stuff, and he just puts it out there. I got one that's even bigger, little Rocket Man, and he's going to do this. Well, I don't think he wants to do that because we will show him something and he never. Yes. And I look, I'm like, wow, this guy, the human element of it. I mean, and people hated it. They hated that he spoke the truth, but they were always trying to ridicule him nonstop. Whereas on the left, don't touch them, no matter how many times they make mistakes, how many times Hillary Clinton trips and falls. Biden is slurring of his words. He's coming out saying, "Oh, this is my wife. This is my sister." It's like, no, it's the other way around. No one says anything. It's like, nothing to see here, folks. Yeah, he said it, but nothing to see here. He goes on Anderson Cooper at Town Hall. How does it feel being in the White House? Well, I wake up every day and I say, where are we? And he probably actually meant that.
Yeah.
But no one is going to touch it. I'm like, come on. You can grab that and take it for miles laughing with it. But it's like they're all afraid to say anything against these guys.
It's strange, though, but like as a comedian, and I'm not even, and I say this in all sincerity, as a comedian, I kind of feel like I have to pull my punches with Sleepy Joe because he's not well. He's not well. It's like if it was your grandfather and he was acting like that, you'd be worried. And
the only thing I can tell you is go back and look at what comedians were saying in the late '80s about Reagan, because they gave no quarter to Reagan on what was probably a very similar beginning.
That's very true. That's a great point.
On the other hand, you got to call your shots as far as, honestly, I mean, how it is. People show up to be amused and entertained. And if you're in this profession, you can't, in my view, you got to have thick skin and be able to take some hit, So, I mean, I just think that's the case. I think you have to. If you're offended by someone else's words about you, especially if you don't perceive them to be accurate, then it's the wrong field, because the challenges are going to be a lot tougher and particularly at that level. I mean, if you go back on North Korea and you think about what that meeting, if you recall, that Obama had with Trump in the Oval Office. It was like roughly a 90-minute meeting. It was supposed to be 30. He had two things he wanted to talk to him about, basically. Number one was, we're on the brink of conflict with North Korea. This is the biggest crisis confronting the country, which he avoided. And then I think the other half of it was, you cannot hire Michael Flynn, because he had a real obsession with Flynn. Maybe what he knows, I don't know. I don't think we've ever fully understood precisely what his objections were. They clashed, obviously, on ISIS policy and everything else, but he was, to spend half your meeting with the president-elect saying, don't hire Michael Flynn, says something about Michael Flynn.
Mm-hmm. But, just thinking out loud, I think that would make a great boxing match to see Trump and Obama in the ring together. I would put my bets on Trump.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you Trump versus Obama and Sleepy Joe at the same time. I'll do it.
Adam Schiff. And throw him Adam Schiff also. I'll pencil that.
A video of him throwing the first ball out. I think it might have been a Nationals game.
Uh-huh.
And there's another one where he talked his whole life about what a White Sox fan he was. He's like, I'm all about the South Side and all this stuff. And he's in the White House broadcast booth, and they're saying, "So, big White Sox fan, Mr. President, who are your favorite players this year?" And he's sitting there stumbling. He couldn't name one White Sox. It's literally hysterical. I had to put it in the chat for those who haven't seen it. And you realize this guy's like, there's no authenticity here, man. This dude's all, it's all contrived.
Right, he's packaged.
His books, he didn't write those books. And I'll tell you one thing: a lot of the presentation of the first 35 years of his life is misrepresented, or polished in certain ways.
Yeah,
and no one
they all are.
Relationship. I mean, lots of theories, and ultimately, I guess maybe it's not really much of our business, but it is our business if you got to misrepresent it. If you're going to say, "Hey, my dad left my mom," but really it was my mom who left my, stuff like that. You're playing politics with your life in ways that I think are, and I think his presentation in 2008 was an incredibly polished one that was not authentic, whereas Trump in 2016 was authentic. And again, what's the lesson? I guess both approaches work, but I think the American people want authentic today,
Right.
And we need to demand authentic, because it is give people what you want. If we're out here leadership wise and in influencing the political culture in this country, and we say, look, man, well, you got to keep it real. We want, no cliches, no escaping answering questions, no dodging tough questions, no escaping interviews, no misrepresenting yourself. We want to know you, and we'll respect you when you do that. That is what we'll get. And if we don't do that, if we sit around and we're, passive about it, we let them polish this presentation and tell us one thing and do another, we're going to get more and more of that. And so who does this whole thing come back on? Continue to say it comes back on the grassroots, it comes back on the people. What kind of country do you want? And what are you prepared to put up with? Because they will not stop until you make them stop.
Right. And that's what we have here now. I mean, just the other day, you have them putting together a commission on talking about deplatforming Fox News, Newsmax, and One American News. And they were serious about it. And I was watching this thinking, wait a minute. They actually want to shut down opposing views for their views. It's like there is some beauty contest. It's like, well, we're the winner. We look the best. So we should be allowed to go out and tell people what's right and wrong and not the other side. Like, this is America. And we're sitting up talking about this.
Getting to private companies what networks they do and don't carry is frightening enough.
And writing letters to them, telling them that you should deplatform AT&T and Comcast. Like, is this actually happening before our very eyes? And no one is saying anything about it. It's just, oh, yeah, they had a meeting. Like, this is damn scary and is dangerous. Because before long, it starts there, and then it starts to spread.
That's happening, though. I mean, they are going to exert pressure to try to get those three networks off of the Comcast, off of Verizon, off of AT&T, off of these major platforms. And these companies are given tons of money, and they got a whole broad range of policy issues before the federal government. These Democrat politicians are acutely aware that whether or not they carry these three networks is probably not their foremost corporate agenda item before the government. They've got other big ones, including contracting with the government.
Yeah.
And there's all these conflicts, and there's all this behind the scenes story. And ultimately, these are First Amendment issues. And I would contend they're 10th Amendment issues. You know, what is the role of the federal government? Remember that proposed legislation about a decade ago, the Enumerated Powers Act, it was called. I'm a real big fan of this. It would mean every piece of federal legislation starts out with a summary of what in the Constitution of the United States of America affords the Congress to take this action at all, right? Because when you think about all the things that they do, so many things are not an enumerated power in the Constitution. They're not something that is delegated to the federal government. They're either a state or local government issue, or they may not be a government issue at all. And this is, I think, one of the slippery slopes that we've been down our whole lifetime now. And it's gotten to the point where there's literally no topic that wouldn't warrant a congressional hearing or legislation of some sort. I mean, and we don't even question the power afforded Congress to take these steps. So
I tell you what, I think discussions like this, that ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. Obama said it years ago.
The ship gets into navigation trouble because it's so far offshore, and this is where we're headed right now. Is that these guys constantly?
Here's what.
Right, it's
all lovely. It's all lovely, and we'll get to that. Here's my point. Whoever has the most voters gets to do what they want. We need more people on the right. That's what it boils down to. We can get to all this other stuff as we go, but if we don't act fast and really get out there, grassroots, get people, talk to them, and get them to start leaning to the right and wake up to the way that this country is slipping through our fingers, we're going to be talking about this hill of beans and that hill of beans, and Joe Biden is going to leave the borders wide open. He's going to make at least 11 million people, probably 30 million people citizens, and we'll never win another election. Then it's just over. Then it's all just we're complaining about stuff. We got to get boots on the ground. We got to talk to people. We need more voters. That's whoever gets the most people gets to do what they want. We need more. And Trump was on the right track. And you mentioned it earlier with like being the party of the working man and being we literally and our conservative values haven't changed. I believe in individual rights and I want individuals to do well, but we got to spread that message. And if they take Fox and Newsmax and OAN down and they're going to get people off of Facebook and Twitter, we got to organize. We got to do it yesterday.
Newsmax and OAN and Fox to some extent are more important now than ever. I mean, they have control, and you think about the systematic control of these institutions. Again, like Mr. Potato Head, this is no accident. This is by design. This is, they took academia when few were concerned about it, or they said that doesn't relate to me. Finally consolidated control of it completely to the point where the most outrageous things happening at these universities you could possibly imagine. Moved on. The media, I was talking about media bias back in the late 80s. That was bias. This is now wholesale positioning that, I assume is an entire like corporate culture. You go into it, you know what you have to say. And then you look at Hollywood, gone. Music, pretty much gone. Kid Rock lives on, Ted Nugent's pretty much over with. What else we have? I guess, Trump was making a little bit of progress there for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we get that ground back? How do we push back so that we're relevant? I mean, because they definitely want to shut us down. They kicked us off all these platforms. They could shut us down on Facebook. They could shut us down completely from look at what happened to Parler.
Yeah.
I mean, if they wanted to, they could just say, this is it, and it's over. And clearly, there's no one on the left that's going to say anything about it. They could care less. They want our voices to be silent.
But we
it's like we're living in a precarious world right now.
You know, we raised this before, but just to reiterate the question, you know, guys, it's like, who on our side was accountable for making sure that we did not have technical platform bias to the point where an entire social media network, which by the way isn't even producing content, they're hosting content, is taken down over what?
We fell asleep. We fell asleep when all this was happening. We fell asleep.
But okay, we're now a month out from this election. All right, we have problems with that. We have all these institutions that have fallen under the control, and we're still going to battle every day with the same people, the same institutions, the same approach. I described it today in an email to a colleague as individuals who are basically documenting the decline of American civilization and the American nation state. And we look at these people as leaders because they're going around giving speeches on campus about that. They're writing books about that. The books are selling. They're getting paid a lot to give the lectures. They're getting paid a lot to host TV shows on these topics. But ultimately, if your messaging every day is simply that of documenting the decline, and that decline is happening on your watch, you're no leader. And of course, these people are no leaders. They don't consider themselves leaders. They are individual entrepreneurs filling a certain role in the American culture. And we need to wake up to that fact. The leadership was really, you know, who was out on the grassroots block by block in this 2020 campaign, making sure that the stuff that did happen didn't happen, that would have allowed our great 45th president to have had 4 more years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to pivot, just a little.
National Committee, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
Michael, you ever hear from these guys? They tell us they reached, and I say reached, they mean they knocked on your door or they called personally, 150 million registered voters. And I say, no way. And every year this number grows. Every year I ask around. I don't think there's a whole lot of people more politically connected with voters in this country, and particularly Republican voters in this country. And I don't hear anyone who hears from these guys except when they ask for money.
Yeah, I really don't either. I've never had anybody knock on my door. I've never had anybody talk to me, you know, coming off of an airplane, or every time you go into a grocery store and there's somebody with a petition there, they smell like patchouli and they want to raise my taxes.
Andrew, you were about to say?
We're playing in comedy clubs now. I mean, what are people responding to?
I'll let you know. But Andrew, what'd you have, buddy?
Michael, you can answer first, and I'll circle back to Jen Psaki style the question what I had.
Circle back to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Circle back.
What's the comedy clubs like, Michael? When you go and have your brand of conservative comedy, do you get some pushback, or is it generally everyone's pretty nice?
Here's what I do now. I'm working on a show right now, so it requires I'm on the East Coast, but I'm also home base is really Los Angeles. But when I'm doing stand up on the East Coast, I just let it rip. Because East Coast people, New York people are tough, and you're just like, here's what I love about Trump. What I do on the left coast when I'm working in LA, I always just start off with, oh, life is weird. That's weird. They start liking me. They're laughing at my little jokes and stuff, and then you start getting into the common sense. Tell you what, this is crazy, and then they're all laughing, and then you tell them, and that's why I love Trump. And you can just see them have little strokes because they're like, we don't know what to do. We liked him. We thought.
Surprise attack.
Yes, yeah. You get them all buttered up. You got to put a lot of cheeseburger around the medicine, a lot of cheeseburger around the pill before you start throwing it to the puppy.
What I was going to ask is, Michael and Rob, you guys are both New York guys, and Michael Johns is a Northeast guy himself. What do you guys make of this going on with Andrew Cuomo right now? The nursing home scandal, and now he's getting these sexual assault allegations. It's not looking good for him just after receiving his Emmy last year. Complete turn in direction for 2021 so far for this guy.
And yet he wrote a book.
Right.
Management of this incredibly.
Well, I kind of thought, just listening to what the accuser was saying, what he allegedly had done, and what I thought was interesting from hearing all this is that the strip poker, that he wanted to play. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he wanted to display the nipple ring that everyone's been talking about. Does he have one? Does he not have one? Again, material that comedians could talk about. Two of them, like, why aren't they talking about this? It's like, come on. It's like the nipple ring, strip poker. He wants her to see it. He wants her to play with it. I don't know. But that's material for these guys, and they're afraid to touch it because they say he's such a bully. He'll call them up and go, "Don't you dare talk about my nipple ring. That's between me and my significant other." Come on.
You pull one, and he blames Trump. You pull the other,
Right.
and he blames Republicans. It's like a see and say. One of those, Donald Trump wouldn't give us help. He was the worst. But I'll defer. I'll defer if you have some comments about Cuomo.
Well, I'll just say this: I think the guy's I think he's a bully. I think that it's coming full circle. It's not as if though we didn't know something was wrong with Cuomo. He goes on CNN. He's laughing with his brother. I'm single and ready to mingle. Like, you just knew that something was not quite right about the guy, but yet and still the media tried to cover it up. But again, I'm going to bring it back to, comedy. Why won't they make fun of this guy? I want Saturday Night Live to make fun of him. I want to laugh about he and his nipple ring. I want to laugh about his big nose that his brother was talking about. I mean, all this stuff, material that they could be using. Strip poker, and then looking at the Clinton cigar box. It's like, there's so much material. Use it. Make me laugh. Don't be afraid. But they're all afraid to use it.
They're not afraid, dude. They're not afraid. They don't.
What is it?
They want to keep them up on a pedestal. They want to maintain this illusion of Cuomo is a hero. Cuomo is a hero who bravely defended us from Donald Trump. And COVID is horrible, but Cuomo tried his best. And sure, he's got some nipple rings. But we're not going to judge. They want to maintain that hero status when he was like, his policies were literally killing thousands of people. We've on the East Coast, we've known about this for months and months and months. And it's and for them to get mad at Ted Cruz, to try to gin up some fake, ooh, Ted Cruz went to Cancun. I give zero shits. I give zero shits. Cuomo was actively killing people.
Right. Absolutely. Michael Johns, what do you say?
Well, I mean, Cuomo's in political trouble right now. I think, his appeal was one of those daytime press conferences that were resonating for some reason, even though the statistics didn't. And so on the policy basis, clearly problematic. And I think on the sexual harassment allegation, all we're asking for is that these cases be handled seriously, objectively, and by a single standard. And they're not. I mean, look at the Biden allegation that was, out there, and the woman making the allegation from the Senate had to literally go on the 60 Minutes in Australia because the 60 Minutes US wouldn't carry it. And yet you look at, if an allegation like this were being made against a Republican governor right now, there would be no other topic until there was a resignation or a complete, serious investigation. And you just get the sense that it's going to get some attention and not receive the level of seriousness that it requires. And it's problematic, and for women who do experience that, or men who experience it, since I guess that happens too, it's, you report these things in a timely fashion, as difficult as that might be, because it becomes more difficult. And that's the case here, is that I think she wrote an article for Medium, I believe. I haven't read it yet, but apparently documenting all this when she thought Cuomo was going to be appointed AG by Biden. But these issues shouldn't matter based on the aspirations or ambitions of the individual involved. They should just matter. I mean, there's, just inappropriate workplace behavior. I mean, can we just agree on that? I think that's
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible, and you've got to look into the allegations. They're completely, listen. You got to look into them. You got to investigate them. But they're going to protect Cuomo because they still got plans for him. Just like they protected Teddy Kennedy when he left that girl to die in his car. Oh, we got to protect Teddy. He might still, and he had a great career after that. He was the Lion of the Senate. He was a hero. Yep. They got to protect just the same way they're protecting little Gavin Newsom, that little preppy twerk from California.
Recall gaining momentum in California. I'm going to my message to anyone of centrist or center-right political perspectives: don't give up on California yet. We may ultimately have to if we don't reverse course. But at this point, I'm telling you, there is still sensibility out there, and it's a big, big state, and it's a big part of this country's economy, and we can't just sort of throw our hands up in the air about it. And this recall effort could be a real wake-up if we're able to pull it off, and I see momentum for it.
I really
look. The job is about delivering for the people and keeping your word and working hard and doing it selflessly and not taking advantage of your positional authority. Is this too much to ask of our elected officials? I mean, that's what the American people want. And I think they're pretty forgiving on a lot of things, but what we see are people that are taking advantage, and DC has got to be the worst of it all. It's just every single step and everything it's done is with political designs in mind. And meanwhile, the forgotten man and woman who Trump gave voice to is hurting bad, and the policies that put him in this position are now being re-implemented with even greater degrees of urgency and seriousness by a Democrat elite that really, it's tough to look at it and not think they want ill. This transformation is, what did Lenin say in the Bolshevik Revolution? That to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. I think that's the mindset that's driving a lot of this structure. Is that this globalist reset, which I think we all sort of accept is underway right now, right? I mean, it's not a thesis. I would like to see more institutional commentary about it, but it's underway, and it's a big agenda because every country has got its role.
Right.
China will be the center of the universe, and one of our major roles in the reset is to take in the developing world's refugee population, not 11 or 30 million like you mentioned, but maybe twice those numbers.
Right.
That's kind of the role that they see us playing, is we're going to be the buffer for these people in poverty that inevitably they're going to create in these areas. And you're already seeing it, what China's done in Latin America with all these politicized loan programs that have been designed to extend their leverage in Latin America. These guys can't meet their debt payments. They're defaulting on them. And the economic pressure is being exacerbated on Latin America because the Chinese Communist Party is the most malicious political force in the world today, and perhaps in our lifetime. I mean, it's if you go post-Stalin in the Soviet Union, it's definitely right there.
Right.
Well, here's what's going on with just my look at things. And if I had a bigger microphone, I do a live stream on Facebook every Wednesday at the Loftus Party page. And this is the second stimulus bill. And if you think how horrifying, this is how out of touch these elites are. So they tell us COVID-19 is right outside your door. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you dead. You got to wear a mask. You can't go to work. So they know you can't go to work. They're not going to allow you to work, and they're not going to give you help. And their inability, especially the Democrats, because they control Congress, they're writing the checkbook. They can't even come through on the $2,000 those lying pieces of garbage. They couldn't even come through on the $2,000. We're not talking about $2,000 every month. We're talking about $2,000 for the last 8 months. They do not care if people go homeless. They do not care if you can't buy food. They do not care if you die. In this, the biggest crisis they've said we've had, they can't have a clean bill. They gotta fund the Met. They gotta fund a tunnel going to San Francisco. They gotta do.
It's not even open, and they're giving it relief funds. Ponder that.
And not only that, they've also got to fund Pakistanians' gender study. Not as if though the Pakistanians even care. It was like, again, identity politics. They want to know if it's a girl or a female. Okay, well, pull your pants down. If you see something swinging, you're a male. If you don't see it swinging, you're a female. There you go. $10 for the gender study. Doesn't go much further than that. But you're right. They just don't care. It's all about identity politics. It's by design, but they want the people to think that they care, but they don't. Gentlemen, this has been a great show. I've enjoyed it. I can't believe that we're already an hour into the show. I want to thank you both, Michael Johns and Michael Loftus, for joining us. Definitely want, if you want, there Michael is, the Loftus Party on Facebook and YouTube. You got to check him out because he is a lot of laughs. And when we're going through what we're going through right now, it's not just about politics, but you got to laugh. It's okay to laugh. And to my fellow liberal comedians that are out there, please make fun. Have some fun out there. Don't be afraid. We'll laugh, yeah, they'll try to counsel you, but we got your back. We've got your back. Andrew, you have anything you want to say?
Chappelle will come through.
Yes.
No, just a big weekend this weekend.
Special of Chappelle's is one of the most hysterical people ever made.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the Chappelle show myself.
Baby, remember? Talk about the kid on the street corner.
Oh, yeah.
But big weekend this weekend with CPAC. President Trump is speaking on Sunday. Michael Johns, what do you think, as a former presidential speechwriter for yourself, briefly, what would you say that President Trump should hit on in this speech at CPAC?
I'll be on One American News Network tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about exactly that topic. The essence of my message is going to be that Trump needs to basically reiterate that we cannot have 20th century solutions for 21st century problems, and that the challenges that the Make America Great Again agenda are tackling, particularly that of China, immigration, and trade, are a centerpiece of the Republican Party that needs to be here to stay. I think he needs to walk through with some degree of detail, not exhaustively, but some degree of detail, where he stands on the election fraud and how we should be feeling and what we should be doing about it, because we shouldn't be engaged in violent attacks on the Capitol. On the other hand, I don't think we should be turning the page either. And then I think he's got to remind the American people about the fact that before the Wuhan virus hit this country, by every metric, job creation, wages, standing in the world, resolution on some trade matters, real broad range of successes. You get 3 incredibly successful years as president, 3 of the most successful years as president that we've had in our lifetimes. Remind the American people of that. And then I'm not exactly sure what his ambitions are. I think he's got to basically say, look, I'm all chips in on 2022. He's already made an endorsement today on the Iowa Republican Party, so I sense that's where it's going. Maybe he's got an outlet for this. He raised a lot of money for these legal funds that haven't been used yet. I think there should be some organizational structure designed to create and resolve some of these things. And then he's got to take it to the left, and he's got to give CPAC attendees action items, because what happens is I've spoken at CPAC myself several times, and I've attended a dozen or more times. And when you walk out of there, these people are all jazzed up after 3 or 4 days of hearing from top political conservative forces and personalities in the country, but they're not exactly sure what to do with all their energy. And there's all these kids, they bust them in, college students, whatnot, and they walk out. This needs, there needs to be a here's what we want you to go do. message attached to what he says. I'm really ecstatic that he's speaking. I'm ecstatic that CPAC has invited him, because if you remember 2016, and I clearly do, there was tension there, and you were threatening to walk out. Remember, this was after the Access Hollywood thing, and he ultimately didn't speak, and that was an important opportunity for him to resolve some of the conservative concerns. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's important, and I think this agenda is here to stay. I think Trump's going to be a force. Not sure about 2024, but I'm hopeful that he'll return, and I think what he has to say is going to be taken really seriously. I hope he's putting a lot of thought into this, because people are going to be glued, and they're going to act on what he has to say. And if he says things matter, they're going to consider them to be important. If they aren't mentioned, they may not be acted upon. That's my sense.
Michael Loftus?
I wish I was going. I wish I was going to CPAC, and I just come back to.
They would love you at CPAC.
We need more people. People need to support creators on the right. There's people out there. There's a lot of conservatives in the hip hop movement. Buy their singles. Support.
There's a song called "Circle Back." Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. We've got to support each other. We've definitely got to support each other. There are a lot of people that are out there in the hip hop community that are doing it, but if we don't support each other, we don't stay together to make this movement grow. And I think that was one of the things, Michael Loftus, you were saying on your show last night about supporting each other. And I think that was a powerful message, because we definitely got to do that.
Yeah. If there's conservative content creators, sure, like me, like you, on YouTube, subscribe to their channel, watch their stuff, share their stuff. We have to be on multiple platforms, but we got to be going. I found it very interesting they didn't want people going to bars and restaurants during COVID, even though they weren't like super spreader things, because that's where the revolution started, man. That's where, when those guys were, the founding fathers were getting together, they were going to pubs, they were going to taverns, and they were exchanging ideas. The country's jacked up. We're on the wrong path, big time. And the establishment GOP is asleep at the switch. And the Democrats are just adding more voters by the boatload. And they're coming by the border even as we speak. So we need to circle the wagons and wake people up to, Joe Biden's not building any factories. No. You can't get in line to work at a solar panel factory. There aren't any. He's lying. He's not going to do shit for anybody. Trump got it done. Populism. America first.
Amen, brother. Well, on that note, we will end our show tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. And again, we've got to support each other. We're on again live Sunday at 10 p.m. Please join us for another episode of After Dark with Rob and Andrew. Thank you. God bless. We're all Americans. Be safe.